Gab Sutton, EFL expert and Birmingham City fan, joins us. Gab, are you well?
Hello, Joe. Yeah, really good to be on the podcast. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. I mean, we couldn't not have you, could we, really, given you are a Birmingham City fan and Wayne Rooney's last job was at St Andrews. First of all, before we get into that, your initial reaction on Wayne Rooney being announced as a head coach of Plymouth Argyle?
Apprehensive, I think, would be one word for it. I do see a world where it could work out if he has a really good coaching staff around him and he can bring in people who have worked at the top level of the game for the last 20 years and just bring that bit of experience, and he's the sort of the face of it all. I could see something like that working out, possibly. But I think one thing I kind of admire in a way his willingness to go back into management after it had gone so badly at Birmingham, because I suppose the milk and honey land for him would have been media and it would have been a lot more of a straightforward career. But I think what's really stands out to me about management, even if I can get my words out, is it takes so much dedication and takes so much focus, and it's the boring bits that actually make up those sort of 1%ers that equate to performance over a whole season. And my worry with Wayne Rooney is that he's always been a person in sport that so thrives on adrenaline, that I don't know that he's actually got the stamina for the boring bits, which is, it's one thing taking the job because you want to be involved in a high stakes point of the season in April. But do you want to set aside a day in June? Can I see him setting aside a day in June to watch Will Jenkins-Davis's loan spells at Torquay United in front of his laptop? I just can't envisage Wayne Rooney doing that. And I think the fact that he's chosen to cover the Euros for the BBC at the group stages kind of sort of feeds into that theory for me.
Yeah, I'm glad that you backed that point up. When on Twitter, I thought I was going mad yesterday, Gab, when suggesting that, Kevin was saying, well, pre-season doesn't start till the end of the group stage. Like, well, it doesn't for the players, but, he has to know the facilities. He has to meet his coaches. He has to set out boundaries, roles, responsibilities. He has to watch the tape back of the season, analyze the strengths and weaknesses, and arrange training based on that. Implement training or to put in place training plans, etc. He also has to feed back to the recruitment squad who he's happy with, who he's not happy with, where he desperately needs, and they need to know that before they can get on. So I thought I was going a bit crazy when I was saying that. People were telling me that it was not a problem. But
no, you're not being crazy. I completely agree with you. Yeah,
if he really does care, then you would. I think you would sack off that and focus on this, and I think that's going to be the first. I think keeping Kevin Nanscoville was the first sort of test or hurdle that could have been a problem for his perception, and also the start of the regime. And I think, will he stay at the Euros, or will he sack that off and really invest his time in the preparation work, laying the groundwork for the season? I think that's the second test. We'll see how that pans out.
It's not just it's not just Kevin Nanscoville that's staying. Simon Ireland is staying too, and he was a bit of an unsung hero with Nance and Neil in those last 6 games, because he's come to the final. It's most interesting that he's staying, and I heard that Pete Shuttleworth is coming down with Wayne Rooney, who's his sort of top analyst, probably the person to do all the hard graft that you just referred to, looking at videos, etc., summarising them. Can we reasonably expect Wayne Rooney to sit through hours of Will Jenkins-Davis? We can't. Can we? Let's be honest.
I think we should.
Why does he get different treatment to other managers?
Yeah,
why does he get
you've got
different
other
treatment to other
people
managers?
to do that.
People are saying if he's got an experienced number 2, it'll be all right. It's like, well, why don't we just hire a number 1 who's got experience? It'll be okay if he's got a number 2 who watches tape for him. Why don't we just hire a number 1 who can watch the tape? And
I just say it's quite interesting. So many people were for Neil Warnock, and Neil Warnock's a front man for Ronnie Jefferson. Ronnie Jefferson does all the hard yards for Neil Warnock, and yet many people were behind him. So it's getting the balance right, and he's got to prove himself. And I understand. I'm worried about him spending 8 hours on the coach coming down from North after a Tuesday-Wednesday game. Is he going to hop off at Manchester or what? I don't know. And those are the sort of downsides. But the upsides are, can he galvanise us as a group of supporters, us against the rest, and shake off the surly image and be the front man for the Green Army? He's got to engage the fans. Birmingham, he had no chance. They didn't want him because, quite understandably, he was imposed upon them when John Eustace was it was a 6th place. He had no chance. Here he's got a chance. Pre-season, he's got time to invest with the fans before the season starts. And I think that does make a difference. And he's got time to invest with the players. Some won't like it. But I was quite struck. There's a guy called Gary Evans who played for Derby when Wayne Rooney was manager. And he said, and these are key words, his man management, and I use those words carefully, was brilliant. Everything that Ian Foster seemingly wasn't, we now seemingly have. And if he's a man manager and can deal with the players individually in groups and bring them to a higher level, I don't expect much more from him than that, other than the sort of team collective performing on the pitch. I don't think it's necessary for him to do the hard yards work that some other managers, micromanagers, that Ian Foster was. Let's be honest.
Can I give you another perspective on this? Sorry, I don't think I caught your name.
That's Graham.
Graham, can I give you another perspective on this? Because I think I actually went for dinner with a Football League manager a couple of weeks ago, and this is someone who's at a pretty well-run club who doesn't have to do everything. And that person actually messaged me about half an hour before saying, I'm not going to be exactly on time because I've got a couple of calls to make. And I had absolutely no problem with that at all, because even though it's mid-May, and their season had finished and nothing urgently in front, they were still focused on bits and pieces they had to tie up, making calls to managers, studying players, all the preparation. So I think it's a very dangerous game to sort of underestimate the level and the depth of preparation that's required of a Football League manager, even if you're at one of the better run clubs, because it's those little 1%ers, those little small details that can really make the difference over a full season. So that's the important thing for me. And I think that if Wayne Rooney's going into it thinking he sort of wants the best of both worlds, where he wants the thrill of being a manager, but he also wants to go off to, watch the Euros in Germany and watch the top. And I feel like it feels to me like he wants to have it both ways. And I'm just not sure it works like that.
Yeah, there's some comments coming up which kind of epitomise what I was talking about earlier, where it's like, if you're saying something negative or highlighting a potential problem, you're accused of not supporting the club or supporting the manager. That's not true at all. It's about highlighting all the potentials and drawing a conclusion from that. I've seen give your heads a wobble. Loads of managers started off badly. That's true. Sure. But you can only draw conclusions from the evidence that you have. I saw a comment. Here's another one. I've never seen such a big bunch of know-it-alls in all my life. So you do the day-to-day activities of managers, do you? BS. It's quite common knowledge what goes into the preparation for we do know what goes into the preparation for training, etc. And we even if and someone said earlier, he's got the backroom staff to do that, but he hasn't even met his backroom staff. He doesn't know who he wants doing those things, and if he doesn't himself identify what he wants his backroom staff to do, then they're basically doing the job. He doesn't really have a role. He's just a puppet, a figurehead. So, by pointing these things out, we're not saying he's going to fail or that we want him to fail. I think everybody here would like him to succeed. That we're highlighting the potential problems that may occur in the operation as it stands, and on the basis of the evidence that's been before. And I can understand people don't like hearing this, thinking that, I potentially, Gab is very much an expert. As he said, he's picked the brains of some very high level figures and does this for a living. me, not at all. But to sort of suggest, I literally had someone say, tweet me yesterday, we've got professionals at the club, so that's all you need to know. As if we don't have to question. I think there's a multi-billion-dollar sports journalism industry that sort of is based on asking questions about those in authority. Is the Man United manager going to stay? Does he deserve to? Who's going to be the next Chelsea manager? If we just said, oh, there's professionals at the club, we'll leave it to them to make the decisions, then we'd never do okay. So tell me what Ten Hag did last Wednesday. I don't understand how me knowing what Ten Hag did last Wednesday has any reference to knowing what that has no reference as to what goes into the preparation of a pre-season. There was a chap on Twitter who was himself a lower leagues or non-professional semi-pro coach who said the same thing. He said he's been a manager, and to try and instill a new philosophy in a month is really, really hard, and that's at that level, let alone at a higher level. There's a lot of aggression against negativity that that negativity is or that by highlighting these things is being pointed out as being disloyal or somehow disruptive. It's not, well, it shouldn't be. We all hope that Rooney is successful, but one has to consider all the potentials in the situation.
Can I just ask, because Gary Rowett obviously is the experienced manager type that I think you possibly would consider a good fit for Argyle. And yet, on the last 6 games, Nance and Neil outperformed Gary Rowett at Birmingham, and Birmingham relegated. So he had all the knowledge and experience that many people thought might be a good fit for Argyle, but Birmingham was still relegated. It wasn't Birmingham's fault. It was the fact that every other club won every other game. I mean, it was just pretty unusual. But would Gary Rowett have been a good fit for Argyle, following your argument?
Well, if I can come in on this, I definitely think this is a stage of Plymouth Argyle's trajectory where an experienced championship-proven manager would have been very valuable, because I think that this positioning where Argyle are sort of lends itself to a bit of nice, a bit of knowing what it takes at this level, and somebody who's been consistent in terms of output at this level over a number of years. Now, I would have suggested Paul Heckingbottom or Alex Neil would have been fantastic candidates for that role. It seems like both of them turned Argyle down. But if you look at what Gary Rowett has done, he's been a very consistent manager at this level over the last 10 years. So that would be sort of my argument for someone who's got a bit more second tier nous.
And since Rooney left, Birmingham averaged 1.1 points per game, which would have been 50 points for the season on that basis between Mowbray and Rowett. Whereas Rooney was averaging 0.67 points per game, which is like 31 points for the season. So that's not to I'm just saying that Rowett would have done a job if he'd have been there that season. You extrapolate that, which I don't think is necessarily a fair way, very reductive, but that says he'd do around a 50-point job. There was a comment just there. Dan Underwood asked if we'd be having this negative comments if Heckingbottom was appointed. Well, no, because we'd be making the assessment based on Paul Heckingbottom's previous experience. That the factors we'd be considering would be a different set of factors. We probably wouldn't be having the same negative chat. I'd be talking about a manager who'd got a team promoted and seems to perform relatively successfully in each of his roles. So that of course wouldn't be the same case. Again, I think that people are feeling a bit attacked, or that criticism or that questions are criticism and questions aren't criticism. They're just highlighting the different factors in play.
Can I ask, just out of interest, did Wayne Rooney do any meet the fans meetings or anything in his short tenure? Was there any attempt by the club to sort of bring him to encompass the fans? I mean, Argyle are going to do this big time, I'm sure, in the next few weeks. Who's going to make a difference? But did that ever happen at Birmingham?
Not to my memory and knowledge, no, it didn't seem like a particularly common thing. I mean, I'm sure that sort of thing would definitely help in terms of greasing the wheels for fans to get to know Wayne Rooney and connect with him a bit more. And I'm sure that kind of thing would help, definitely.
Gab, just fill us in then on that time at Birmingham for Rooney, because it's wide knowledge that obviously there was unrest when John Eustace got the sack. Certainly from the outside looking in, it seemed then that the players, the fan base, certainly the players seemingly really didn't enjoy the fact that Rooney was brought in. It sort of seemed like, he was brought in for the off the field reasons, perhaps more than the on the field reasons with the Wagner group. Just fill us in from your point of view on Rooney's brief stay in the Midlands.
Sure. Well, I think it's very fair to say that it was a difficult job for him from the outset because of the work that John Eustace did. So he was coming in as maybe a little bit of a stepfather figure, in that Eustace already had a very good rapport with the players, and he had a blueprint to get the best out of them. And I think Wayne Rooney went in straight away to implement more of a possession-based style, which wasn't exactly how we'd kind of based our good start. Our good start was more playing once we're in the opposition half rather than playing out from the back so much. And that's kind of what worries me a little bit about Wayne Rooney as a manager, in that, is he going to be adaptable enough? Because in his first season at Derby, I actually thought they were quite well organised. I thought they got the ball quite forward nice and early, and actually they sort of did well for the resources, which were incredibly limited at the time. So that kind of gave you a bit of hope around Wayne Rooney, the manager. And then I think the following season, which was 21-22, what he felt was that I'm Wayne Rooney, the manager. I need to build a brand for myself to be playing a certain style of football to appeal to clubs higher up the pyramid, because I want to manage at the top level. And the problem he had was that he tried to then get Curtis Davis and Phil Jagielka, Jagielka being 40 odd, trying to play out from the back, and it was an absolute disaster. You could see the anxiety about the way they were playing. Those centre backs just weren't comfortable playing that way, and it made Derby a lot more exposed. Now, obviously, the off-field problems at Derby were massive, and I'm sure he would have liked to have managed in better circumstances. But so you could argue there were tough circumstances for different reasons in both the jobs he's had in English football so far. But I also think you have to question the way he's gone about it.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's with a pre-season, a much longer run in to implement whatever style he's going to implement. It seems to be the sort of 3-5-2 combination playing out the back. He did mention in that podcast, I think, Ryan Allsop, who, funny enough, was the goalkeeper for Hull in our last game.
All right.
And personally gave me kittens the way he tried to play out the back. So, but we do actually have in Michael Cooper, if he stays, one of the most accomplished people from playing out the back. So,
Sure.
If you've got the right people in the right places, we haven't got a Phil Jagielka or Curtis Davis in there. So we've got a platform to build from, and he's got time to build from it.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Yeah. I think it's a great point, Graham, and I definitely think having longer to prepare is going to help, certainly from that point of view. But again, the big thing, I don't know if we've already mentioned this on the podcast, but I think the quality of the coaches is going to be so huge, because he didn't really take much of a backroom team with him to Birmingham. So maybe a few people like, I think somebody like Mike Phelan, if he could tempt Mike Phelan to Plymouth Argyle, that would be a massive boost, because he's someone who's got a bit more of the technical and tactical detail that would maybe allow Wayne Rooney, a bit like you were alluding to earlier, Graham, to be the figurehead. And that's one of the ways where I could possibly see it working out.
Let's look at the positives then, because I'm sort of a little bit wary that obviously, we're 48 minutes in now, and it does seem like we're trying to pigeonhole the negatives of the appointment, if you like, because he is coming into a club, and this is the point I was putting across on my interview with Radio Devon yesterday. is that he's coming into a job now that is far more secure. With all respect to Birmingham and the Wagner Group and things, because obviously he didn't have a transfer window and stuff. He's coming into a club now that's a lot more secure. He's certainly more than Derby. I don't know about DC. We're going to find out in about 15 minutes about his time at DC United. Stay tuned for that. But the Plymouth lifestyle as well, because we fully understand it's almost like a non-negotiable now that you have to fully immerse yourself into the one Argyle. You have to be in the area. So to take the job, Rooney will have had to have agreed to that. It's a quieter lifestyle down here. He's going to be out of the way. Once we get the circus and the media frenzy out of the way this week at the press conference, it's going to be a lot quieter for him. It's going to be him and the group and the club. And I just wonder whether that's, because I've always got the impression, I don't know what you three think, that perhaps the attention that Rooney's managerial career has got since he gave up playing, he's never really found it that comfortable. I don't necessarily think he's enjoyed the frenzy that's come with it. And I do wonder, once the whole buzz of everything over the next 10 days, 2 weeks wears off, that we might, the nation might see a bit more of a relaxed Wayne Rooney. I understand winning games will help that, and hopefully he gets off to a good start. Gab, with his contacts with Neil Dewsnip, with his relationship with Neil Dewsnip, he's going to have almost like a father figure there, isn't he? To put his arm around him and help him through this. Because Wayne will know, and Neil will know, that Wayne's in a tricky position with his managerial career at the moment because of it didn't go well at Birmingham. That has to be a real positive for him, isn't it? That he's come into this job and he has somebody there who's willing to help him, support him, and put everything on the line to give him the resources he needs.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at this two ways, because when Blues appointed Wayne Rooney, it was because Gary Cook is best mates with Wayne Rooney's agent, and that actually meant that there was a bit of cynicism around the appointment, around the sort of the coziness of it. But I can understand the rationale in wanting to work with someone on either side that you sort of know and trust. So yeah, hopefully that will help. But I think after the Ian Foster appointment didn't go as hoped, I think there's a lot of pressure on this appointment, and it does feel like the club is prioritising the media and marketing aspect, which I can sort of understand because there is a lucrative side to that. But I think it's important to be a football team that has a media operation, not a media operation that plays five-a-side on Sundays. So that's kind of how I feel.
No, can I say I absolutely agree with that. It presents incredible media opportunities, but at the end of the day, it's the hard yards, as you called it, behind the scenes, doing all the difficult stuff, the setup and all the getting the pre-season right, where we're going to go for training, who we're going to play, where we're going to play, all that sort of thing. I mean, some of that will be set up, but you did mention his agent. Is Paul Stretford still Wayne Rooney's agent?
I presume so.
And presumably, would he have played some big part in his this sort of re-emergence of his managerial career? Is that something?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine so. I think one of the gentlemen mentioned that it could have been Wayne Rooney reaching out to Neil Dewsnip, but it wouldn't surprise me
likely to be Paul Stretford.
If it was Paul Stretford making the contact and then Wayne Rooney coming in, so that would have been.
There are several other positives as well. Like, Brendan Galloway, for example, is probably our second best defender, or is very even running when he's fit. Gibson close in terms of all round game, and he's good friends with Wayne Rooney. Apparently, I discovered last night, and that might well convince.
He did his testimonial, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, and so it might well convince him to stay. That's fantastic. As will Ryan Brunt's tweet. I saw that everyone he's spoken to who's played under Rooney really likes him, and I have to row back on what I said about him hanging players out to dry at Birmingham with public criticism, where I've read reports that despite those comments, a lot of the Brum players still hold him rather in relatively high regard, and didn't find those to be, it wasn't anything he hadn't said in the dressing room or sort of said that he was gonna say publicly. So there's a potential there for to motivate the squad he's got. Also, the squad is potentially better equipped to play the, I believe it was no fear, brave, were the sort of the buzzwords that kept being used, football that He was trying to instigate at Birmingham into, Birmingham will probably have a better squad, but better equipped to play a different style of football, as John Eustace discovered and put into practice quite effectively at the start of last season. Argyle very much built in Stephen Schumacher's mould still, in terms of a lot of the key pieces, perhaps better equipped to play that style of football, so that the transition might be smoother. He might get a better tune out of the team, even if it's not as good, man for man in a sense. We've talked about the pull, media, and the fact that he did approach, or he sounded out, or his agent sounded out for the job, shows that he's invested. Whether as Gab has, very, pointing out the difference between being invested and committed are actually two different things. However, that shows that he's got a hunger to some degree. If we can harness that and help him to make the most of that, then he does have the potential to be a good number one. That let's hope all of those things sort of come up trumps and end up outweighing what we've enumerated as the potential problems or obstacles. But there's probably other things that we don't know about, that were discussed in that meeting, that were, I'm very keen to say I don't see the footballing argument for it, but I also wasn't in the boardroom hearing his philosophies and his, this is what I would do if I had the chance, etc., etc. So, there is as plenty of the fans have said down here in the comments, if he gets a full pre-season, if he does commit, it does feed back into the recruitment. He gets a team that is in his image to as far as we can provide for him. There's every potential that it can succeed, and obviously, that's what I'm hoping for. So that there are a lot of positive. It's not all by no means all doom and gloom. I just think that the headline is the media circus that's followed it, in terms of the commercial interest being perhaps put ahead of the footballing decisions.
Can I sort of switch roles and maybe ask a question to you guys for a moment, because I'm really curious about. There's been a little bit of. There's been a little bit of talk about the running of Plymouth Argyle after this, which I think you've got to have a lot of gratitude for the work that Neil Dewsnip, Andrew Parkinson and Jimmy Dickinson and Simon Hallett certainly have all done for Argyle, because I think they've done incredible things, certainly in the last 5 years. And even if you want to go into the super big picture, sort of 10 years ago, the club was absolutely on its knees. So, or 11 years ago, whatever. So I think that's really important. But I think people have sort of maybe, which I was quite surprised to see, have actually levelled quite a bit of criticism at maybe Dewsnip, particularly over the last few months. I'm just really kind of wondering what people's take is on it.
Yeah,
I'll let Graham take that.
I think obviously the Ian Foster connection with England and Neil Dewsnip's connection with England, Neil got it both barrels from a lot of fans because of that, because it went so horribly wrong. But ultimately, he's not the executive decision maker. It's Andrew Parkinson and Simon Hallett. They make the executive decision. So they actually made the appointment, obviously based on the interviews. So what went wrong with Foster is that he just turned himself against everybody. He was isolated. He wasn't communicating with the team. Nobody in Argyle. So one Argyle philosophy, unless you're down here, you don't quite grasp it, because we're so isolated. It's just us. And he didn't buy into it. He didn't buy into it within the club. He ignored a whole room full of corporate sponsors paying money. He just didn't engage. I cannot see Wayne Rooney doing anything other than engaging. And if I want to say anything, if the media guys are watching this, recording it, send it to Wayne before his press conference tomorrow, and he'll get a good flavour of the issues that he's got to brief himself on and what he's got to do. Because we need him to succeed. We desperately need him to succeed, and we've got to do everything we can. Yes, we lose our first 5 games like Danny Roll did at Sheffield Wednesday. They didn't bomb him out, and eventually it turned around and got he saved them. So, crikey, I don't know how long he's going to go before it all turns if we don't get results. But all we've got to do is incrementally improve on what we did last season. We were 4 places better last year. If we can be 4 places better and be 15th, 16th this year, that's the sort of outcome a Gary Rowett or a Paul Heckingbottom could have achieved, but it wouldn't have been as in the same vein as what we're going to get. I mean, we are in a roller coaster, and we're all. I mean, who else? We're all going to tune in tomorrow to watch the press conference. How many people are going to be watching that? It wouldn't happen with Gary Rowett or Paul Heckingbottom or somebody similar. So it's a real opportunity. He's got to grasp it, and the club have got to give him everything to support it. And if they do that, the fans will be with them, definitely.
Gab, I'm a little bit wary of we've kept you now for the half hour you offered us, and we do have the second half coming up. We're all about to go and have a halftime orange. Just give us, in your own words, really, like a 3-point. We're in election fever. Give us a 3-point manifesto for Wayne Rooney's pitch as Argyle head coach. What do you think would be the 3 things that he would probably have to do to make this work? Because it's so imperative for both him and the football club that this does work.
First of all, cancel his work with the BBC for the Euros. I don't care what the contractual issues are. I think you have to be mentally committed to the job from the off, especially when you've just taken over. And I think that it's really important that he puts all his focus and all his energy onto preparing for the first day of pre-season, which, by the way, what's it going to be, 4 weeks away, something like that, first day of pre-season?
Yeah.
So I get all your preparation right for that, get as much research into the squad as possible, put all your energies into that, sort of put your media career to one side, like that's over here. I'm going to focus everything into Plymouth Argyle right now. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is to do an interview with Argyle Life, and I think that's that. But no, I think that's the really important thing. I think how he comes across in the media in terms of a willingness to engage with the fans is really important. And then the third thing I think is it's just about results, isn't it, as well? That's what he's going to be judged on. That's the bottom line. It's such an obvious thing to say, but that's true. So I think putting all his focus and energies onto Plymouth Argyle, showing a real willingness to engage with the supporters via various platforms, and thirdly, he's just got to get results as well.
He certainly does. Gab, you've been an absolute star for the last half hour. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks.
I will be on with Gab in July for a deep dive into Argyle's season ahead. I don't think we quite expected we'd be talking about Wayne Rooney's Plymouth Argyle in that deep dive. But do keep your eyes out for that. Gab, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your bank holiday weekend.
Thanks, guys. It was great to meet you guys as well. Cheers. Thank you.